from the Institute for the Advancement of Cognitive Education. This is Powerful Podcasts, conversations with scholars, authors, and professionals, cutting-edge resources, helping you to enhance better thinking and learning. Welcome. Today we've got Lilian Lomofsky. She's practicing as an educational psychologist in the Oakdale Practice in Newlands, Cape Town in South Africa. She's an expert in the theory and applied systems of Feuerstein's Mediated Learning Experience. And in this regard, she's also an accredited trainer with the Feuerstein Institute. Welcome, Lilian.
Thank you, VP.
So you have dedicated a significant portion of your professional life to the enhancement of better thinking and learning. Can you maybe tell us a bit, where does that come from?
Yes, I was actually in the 1980s. I was working at a school as a remedial teacher, had a background in psychology, and I'd specialized in children with special needs. At that time, I somehow felt like something was missing. We needed a little more to what we were doing. And then I heard about Feuerstein's work, did some training, came back, and I realized that my whole view about teaching and learning had changed. And I noticed that the interaction with the children changed and their motivation increased. So thereafter I became a trainer and tried to encourage teachers and parents to understand this method.
Lilian, you are considered one of the leading voices and experts in the field of mediated learning experience in South Africa. Can you explain to us, where does the concept of mediated learning experience come from, and how does MLE differ from a direct exposure to learning?
There are two modalities through which children learn. The first one is direct learning, which is really the most common way. Children interact directly with objects, people, situations, what we call the stimuli that come from the environment. This form of learning is a trial and error way of learning and is left to chance, and it's what we call incidental learning. The mediated learning is what Feuerstein calls it, but it's something that has been there from time immemorial because it's a natural mother-child interaction that happens when the mother captures the child's gaze and teaches the child how to focus on her face. Feuerstein came to mediated learning because he was working with children who were refugees from the Second World War. He was in a situation where he had to do standardized IQ testing, and he found that these children were failing on the IQ test, so he started teaching them while he was assessing, and discovered or showed that they can actually learn. In which case, he then started developing his own assessment, which he called dynamic assessment, which is mediated, and following on by the IE tools, the IE instruments, which also are a tool through which to mediate to learners. The mediated learning is when we have a parent, teacher, caregiver, or more knowledgeable older. It can be an older sibling, more knowledgeable other person who renders the child more sensitive and more responsive to the environment. So it becomes a reciprocal interaction where they are more focused on relevant stimuli and are able to construct their own knowledge. And in this way, the children learn to interpret and understand the world around them. So learning becomes intentional instead of interactional. And it aims to prepare these learners to become independent learners. For example, a parent can be playing on the beach sand with a child building sand castles, and the young child will say, "Where does beach sand come from?" The parent may then just continue building castles, or they can mediate about the composition of beach sand taking a close look at it, seeing what the little grains are made up of, walking down to the seafront, watching the waves roll in with the shells, which are knocking against each other, disintegrating. They can look at the rock formation and see where it's worn away. Now it's contributed to all the little grains of sand that go together to make up the sea sand. So that's just an example of how they can continue playing, or they can actually mediate.
And what's exciting about this is that it can be implemented in a very natural way.
I agree with you, yes, and this is what should be happening all the time.
There are three basic parameters that are crucial and that must be present in every mediated learning experience. Can you perhaps elaborate a bit on that?
Feuerstein actually has about 13 criteria which he considers are necessary for mediated learning, but there are three which are considered to be universal. In other words, they are in all cultures. The criteria may be transmitted verbally or non-verbally, depending on the culture. Some cultures are more verbal, others are more non-verbal and use more body language. But both of those are considered mediational. So the first one is intentionality and reciprocity, where the parent might say to the child, I want you to look at this carefully and point a finger to it. In other words, he's directing his child's attention. A teacher in the classroom might want to talk about a drought situation, and we'll have a picture, the scene of a drought-stricken area, and streams have dried up. People are walking with buckets of water on their head, and we'll show this to the class and say, what do you see? What do you think is happening here? The learners will respond with different types of answers, and this will lead to discussion. So what we're looking at here is that they need to ask process questions, not just about the content, but about the process of what they are learning. So that's an example of intentionality and reciprocity. The second one is giving meaning to learning. So here the teacher or parent is transmitting cultural and moral values to the child or to the learners by asking, is this content important? Why do you have to learn about this section in history? Or what is the relevance of this? Okay. That's in the classroom. The parent might want to be celebrating a festival, which they celebrate every year, and might say to the learner, why do you think we celebrate this festival? Instead of just having fun and sharing gifts, etc., they might actually transmit the reason to them. The third criteria is what Feuerstein refers to as transcendence, or what means bridging. Here the teacher facilitates the transfer, and the parents as well, of learning to other contexts. So the kind of process questions are, where else would this be relevant? Where else would you apply this principle of comparing? We've just been comparing these two items. Where else do we need to compare? It's also important for a teacher in the classroom to connect the previous lesson to the current lesson, and also to say, what do you think we're going to learn about in the next lesson in the future? Transcendence is also about cultural transmission to the next generation. The older generation transmits their culture to the next generation. So they create an understanding of their past and their present, and in this way the young people are enabled to predict their future. Where are we going to from here?
We live in the 21st century, a lot of changes, a lot of technological development. Can you say, why do you think is mediated learning experience an important aspect of developing children and young people in today's age?
We are living in a rapidly changing society. Our society is changing from mostly from rural to urban. Cultures are in transmission, and very often most of this gets lost and it's not transmitted to the children, to the younger generation. And now we're going to live in a technological society where they're going to have to need the thinking skills of curiosity, of logical reasoning, problem solving. It's important that they are encouraged to think in these kind of critical ways and have higher order thinking skills. So this is very often transmitted through the mediated learning. In this industrial revolution, the children need to have a strong self-concept. They need to have a belief in their own ability. We also found that most parents are working today and often give their children to caregivers who are not trained to mediate and have no interest, not motivated to mediate. So parents need to develop that empathy, be empathic towards their children's needs and how and where to mediate. Some examples are with parents to encourage family activities. It's very good to play indoor games, whether it's board games or musical games. If they play outdoor activities, they again can play games, sport, ball games. I also think that going for walks as a family or picnics is a good way of mediating the need for this family interaction, this human interaction, which so often gets lost. Children are busy on their cell phones, on their tablets, many hours a day, and this time needs to be limited. And it's important that parents make the effort to be mediational.
Thank you very much. I think the last question is, what pointers can you give parents? What would be the most important hints that you can give to parents to enhance the thinking and learning of their children?
Parents need to teach their children to be focused. Okay, we live in a society now where multitasking is the norm of the day. And it's very, very important that they learn the children to focus and concentrate and attend to what they are wanting to do, whether it's playing a game, doing their homework, or whatever. So one of the important things is when they talk to children is to have eye contact. In other words, I'm talking to you now and I want you to listen. And I want you to know that we are going to do, prepare them for what they are going to be doing, whether it's homework or a social event or an outing. So to me, the most important thing is to teach children how and where to focus and how to listen carefully to what people are saying to them. On the 11th of May, we are having a symposium which is open to everyone, to people who are trained in mediated learning and others who are just interested and may wish to attend. So it's open to parents, teachers, and any other professional.
And where will that symposium be?
It's going to be at St. George's Grammar School in Cape Town. It'll be on the 11th of May. Registration's at 8:30 and it'll continue till 12:30. Training in MLE, the mediated learning, is open to parents, teachers, any therapist. This kind of training is widely used, and parents may then apply it, teachers may apply it without any need for accreditation. The other training, to be able to use the instruments, requires 6 or 7 days of training, and thereafter they will receive a certificate from the Feuerstein Academy, and they'll become accredited practitioners in instrumental enrichment, which will entitle them to use the instruments with their own subjects, whether in therapy, in the classroom, or as parents. Okay. This training is going to be offered in Cape Town in June, and it's a 7-day training. It will be during the school holidays, starting from the 18th of June, and they may contact me if they're interested on my email address, lomofsky@mweb.co.za.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your valuable input. It's much appreciated, and it was lovely having you as a guest.
Thank you, VOP.
Our guest today was Lilian Lomofsky, Educational Psychologist at the Oakdale Practice in Newlands, Cape Town, South Africa. She spoke about the basic principles of Feuerstein's Mediated Learning Experience. They will present a Cognitive Enrichment Symposium on the 11th of May 2019. Registration starts at 8:30 at the St. George's Grammar School, 23 Richmond Road, Mowbray. You are welcome to contact Petra Snyman at psnijman@telkomsa.net or telephonically at 073 893 9310. This podcast is produced by the Institute for the Advancement of Cognitive Education. Find us online at www.ilearnthinking.org or on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at iLearnThinking.